Imagine a city teeming with lush greenery, abundant wildlife, and serene lakes. A sight that might lead you to believe you're in a natural forest or savanna. However, this is actually a description of Nanshan, a city in China renowned for its advanced development. This cityscape, filled with towering buildings and skyscrapers, also boasts artificially created green spaces and lakes, all part of a recent initiative known as the Sponge City Project. Interestingly, Nanshan isn't unique in this aspect. There are numerous such sponge cities globally, but the question remains, what are these sponge cities and what is their purpose? Welcome, I am Ahmed Mahmoud, but before we start, if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell so that our videos reach you first. Presently, the world is grappling with climate change. Regrettably, city infrastructures often lack the capacity to adapt to abrupt climatic shifts. Numerous cities are unable to endure extreme natural events, including floods. Emissions from smoke and greenhouse gases have formed a heat-insulating layer around the Earth. Ideally, the heat from the sun should reflect back into space, but this greenhouse gas layer traps and holds the heat, creating a greenhouse effect. But that's not all humans have contributed. Deforestation, road construction replacing green cover, concrete housing, and the concept of modern cities have all exacerbated the heat, even without additional emissions or pollutants. This is because plants and grasses have water in their external pores that cools the sun's heat through a process known as evaporation. Conversely, city-covering asphalt, concrete, bricks used in most of our homes, and even metallic structures of vehicles and trains all absorb the sun's heat and gradually emit it, thereby warming the environment. This scientifically recognized phenomenon is called the urban heat island effect. Consider two adjacent areas, one filled with concrete structures and asphalt roads, and the other teeming with vegetation. The temperature in the built-up area could be 5 degrees higher, sometimes even more. These factors have contributed to a gradual rise in Earth's temperature. This warming could potentially cause ice caps and polar ice to melt, leading to an increase in sea and river levels, resulting in floods and potential submergence of coastal cities. Another issue is that many cities lack the infrastructure to effectively manage rainfall. During floods, water can remain on the streets at high levels for extended periods, sometimes for days or weeks. This is because asphalt is not water permeable, and many cities lack proper water drainage systems. Consequently, water accumulates on the streets for long durations, leading to additional catastrophes. Suppose you're a leader of a country and want to tackle this issue. What's the solution? The answer lies in designing cities that can easily drain water. To achieve this, we need to create openings or holes in all city floors and roads. Sidewalks and large squares are covered with perforated panels. The asphalt mixture on roads is altered by adding high permeability materials. Claylands in some places are mixed with a lot of sand due to its high permeability. This is why these designs are called sponge cities, because everything in the city can absorb water like a sponge. Assuming we've done this and the water has been drained, where does it go? All city surfaces are connected to a drainage system that collects all the water. The water is then stored in large tanks or artificial ponds or lakes. This way, we can protect cities from floods and water accumulation. And we also have a surplus of water that we can use when needed, and the natural water cycle continues without any problems. But is this all about sponge cities? The answer is no. Sponge cities have other requirements, such as increasing plant cover and planting a large number of trees and plants inside the city, especially in areas around artificial ponds and lakes where floodwater will accumulate. This is beneficial for two reasons. The first reason is that plants absorb a lot of water from the soil, thus reducing the amount of water resulting from floods. For instance, a single oak tree draws about 2,500 liters of water from the soil every week. Most of this water evaporates through a process called transpiration. The second reason is that the dense plant cover reduces the air temperature, as we explained at the beginning of the episode, and the plants absorb a large amount of carbon dioxide gas and replace it with oxygen. This process will eventually solve the problem of floods from the roots because climate change occurs due to high heat and greenhouse gas emissions. In addition, the plant cover supports biodiversity, and you will find wild animals, birds, and fish starting to live in the new habitats that the city will create, especially since urban expansion has destroyed many natural animal habitats. So if we compensate them with new habitats, we will achieve environmental balance. So, the topic is a win from all directions. The idea of the sponge city was first proposed in 2000 AD. One of the key proponents of this idea was Konyano, an architect and university professor at Beijing University. For a long time, the Chinese government showed no interest in the concept of sponge cities. However, in 2012, severe floods in several Chinese cities resulted in massive losses. Over 1.5 million people in China were affected by the floods, and about 500,000 people were evacuated from their homes. Thousands of homes, facilities, and roads were destroyed. China lost about 10 billion Chinese yuan due to these floods. When they realized that traditional flood control methods such as dams, gates, tanks, and others had failed miserably in dealing with the problem, they began to look for unconventional solutions. One of these solutions was sponge cities. The Chinese president spoke about the subject in 2013, and in 2015, China officially started implementing the initiative. They began implementing it in 16 different cities and set a plan that by 2030 AD, 80% of urban cities in China will transform into sponge cities. They started covering the roofs of buildings and towers with plants and reducing asphalt and concrete surfaces as much as possible. Instead of making garages above the ground and having a large area of asphalt exposed to the sun all day, they started making garages underground, and the surface becomes gardens and green spaces. Plants began to intertwine with buildings in a way similar to science fiction movies. Many countries began to adopt the idea of sponge cities. They also noticed that planting plants on the roofs of houses reduces energy consumption because these plants reduce the temperature, and therefore the rate of consumption of air conditioners and cooling systems also decreases. A study was conducted in Los Angeles, California, and it showed that planting roofs of buildings with plants in the city can save annually $100 million spent on energy alone. In the end, despite the many positive effects of sponge cities, the subject faces many challenges. For example, the infrastructure of most sponge cities now cannot deal with huge water rates. Current designs can deal with 200 millimeters per square meter per day, and this rate is not small, but it is not large. If the rain is more than that, problems will start to occur because the infrastructure will not be able to absorb these quantities of water. Another negative factor is that the composition of sponge cities can cause pollution of natural groundwater stored in the Earth's interior. In some Chinese cities, for example, 50% of their natural groundwater has been polluted and has become unfit for drinking. Of course, this is a major obstacle facing this project, in addition to the major economic difficulties of the project because it costs huge amounts of money to be implemented, especially since it is a service project, not a profitable one. That's why engineers and specialists try as much as possible to find solutions for the sponge city and develop the idea more and more. But of course, this does not prevent that the idea of sponge cities in general is a very smart idea and can be the solution to face floods and the crisis of climate change. If they can really solve the problems and obstacles they face, maybe one day sponge cities will become natural cities. But that's it. We're done. Who reached here? All those who reached you are the bravest people. Make us like before you leave so that we know how many people reached the end. And don't forget, if you have a nomination for an episode, write it to us in the comments. Most of the episodes we are making now we have taken from your comments. See you. Have a good night. Bye.